So let me introduce myself. Myself, Murli Krishna. You can call me Murli. I'm basically a BTech graduate, having 12 plus years of experience into IT. Primarily working on SAS, and again within SAS, various levels. We have base SAS, we have advanced SAS, and we have business intelligence, and we have data scientist area. So I have covered all these four areas. Currently working mainly as a SAS lead. So working and leading a team of 8 people. And coming to what are the domains I have worked so far. So far I worked in, I started my career in the retail domain, that is of your e-commerce, followed by I moved to healthcare, followed by finance sector, and currently into the banking. So working one of the major, I can say that leading banks in USA, currently working as SAS lead developer into that particular company. So that is a brief introduction about me. In addition to this, throughout my career, I worked on various domains. These are the domains I have worked on. In addition to this, I also worked on the various operating systems because SAS works on Windows, primarily on Unix, and around 30 to 35% contribution on the mainframes. So I worked on all these three environments as well. So whatever we are going to learn in our SAS class, the examples I'm going to bring are whatever the use cases I'm going to bring, that is going to cover all these domains. In addition to this, all these environments as well. That is, what are the various issues we are going to face in those domains? What are the issues that we are going to face with respect to the environments as well? All right. And having said that, I have very good understanding about the clinical SAS, though I am not actively working on the clinical SAS, but I have a very good domain knowledge in that. So I'm also going to give examples on clinical SAS. All right. So this is a brief introduction about me.
So let's utilize today's session for proceed or going with our doubts clarification session, right? So instead of going with a normal question, or I can say that instead of going with the normal assignments, what I thought is, why can't we go with an assignment which has been actually asked as part of an interview? So one of such interviews were one of the Malaysian based company, which I have attended around a couple of years back. I can say around a year or 1.5 years back. I'm not disclosing the name of the company, but on a whole, the question is like this. So you're going to have, they have given a diagram like this. So the diagram indicating, I can say that it is an architectural diagram. This architectural diagram is giving information about what are the various tables that are expecting and what is the relation between those tables. For an example, here you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are total of 7 tables. They have given which and all tables I can combine, and while combining, what are the common keys that I can look for to combine those tables. Because generally we will go with the data step mergers in, or even with the proxy equal joins, we are looking for at least one common attribute between them. So here you can see, if you go to info group X and info group Y, so here I have info group X and info country, these two can be join, or the common variable between these two is nothing but your country ID. Again, if I go to info group X and test response, between that the common ID is going to be group X ID. So they have given information about, our architectural information about, what are the various tables that can join and what are the common variables between them. So this will be helpful in the, maybe the question number 1, it might not that useful. Question number 1 is all about creating the just the tables out of it, out of your input Excel files. But if you scroll down, you can see that there are bunch of charts you are supposed to create. There is a box plot, there is a weighted bar chart, there are going to be some proc reports, and there are going to be some proc tablets as well. All these things you can do only when you know about what is the relationship between these tables. In addition to that, the Smartly has given the formats and also the lengths of your each variable. You can see whatever they put it on your rectangular braces here, those are nothing but the lengths. Whatever they have put it in the parentheses, those are nothing but the formats. That information also given here. You can see numbers in the rectangular braces represents the length of your characteristic variables, and numbers in the parentheses represents the formats of the numeric variable. So even to the question number 1, though we are not very sure about, or though we doesn't need to go with combining the SAS data sets, at least to read the data accurately with all the formats and the lengths, this information is required. And they asked us, please apply the length specified in the above data sets. Please pay attention to the footnotes highlighted in the blue. So the footnotes that is highlighted in the blue is nothing but how you have to read your variables. We'll come to that part as well. And they also said that please use your code, that is your text format, your whatever the code you are writing, they ask the specific code format as well. That is nothing but what type of font you want to use and how much is the size of the font you want to use. Also, they have mentioned. They said us you can go with any number of, or whatever the type of, if you want to go with the proxy equal, you can go with. If you want to go with the loops, you want to go, you can go ahead. You want to go with the macros, you can use it. Anything you can use just to make sure that you can go ahead and give the output for this particular assignment. All right, and you can also produce the output in the multiple ways. So let's go with the easiest way first. Later we can think about the hard way. So before going with that, let me clear the data sets that are already created. So here is your input files are. I can see that all your input files are presented in this particular location. So what I'm trying to do is here itself, I'm creating one folder. I'm calling this as out. Out is the folder where I would like to store my data sets. So this is going to be my permanent library. So my first step is going to be, I'm going to start with create a permanent library. As they ask, I'm creating a permanent library and I'm calling that as test. That is what they have asked, right? If you go to the question, you can see they asked us to go with create or import the attached CSV files into certain SAS library and named it as test. So I'm just creating a library here. You know how to create a library. I need to go with the lib name followed by the library reference. The library reference is nothing but the library name followed by your location. This is what I would like to see. So I'm just executing it and I'm ensuring that this has been created in the Explorer. That is, in your Explorer, you should have a data set called test and it is empty because I don't have any data within that. What's the next step? Now, as they asked, I need to import this CSV and I have to create these data sets. But while creating the data sets, I have to pay attention because I want to consider all the links as well as the formats. Now, what I would like to do is, if I go with the proc import, there are multiple methods to do this. Method number one, I can go with a proc import, is the easiest one. After importing it, because I need to go with the formats as well as the lengths, correct? By using a data step, we can change the lengths, but lengths and formats. Other ways, this is one option. This is option number one in that. Suppose if you want to do smartly, in our case, it is going to be a small data set. So going ahead and changing the data just by using the data step is fine because it is not going to make any performance issues with you. There's no performance bottlenecks at all. But if you're dealing the same with a huge data set where I have huge number of records, will be like say that in the millions or billions, in that particular case, I cannot go with this particular option because reading the same data set just for changing the lengths and formats is unnecessarily making a lot of chairs for you. So what I have to do, I can depend on option number two. And the option number 2 is going to be, I can use proc data sets and I can smartly modify lengths and formats without even reading the data, without touching the data part. I can just work on the description portion of the data set and I can work on it, right? This is method number 1. Saini, are you able to get what I'm trying to say? So far it is clear?
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, clear.
Yeah. Now I'm going with the method number 2. The method number 2 is all about, instead of reading the data, after reading the data, changing all your, what to say, your methods or lengths or formats, why can't I use a data step? While using a data step, I can make use of infile, I can make use of your format and length options. I can go with infile option, so I can specify where my input file is. I can use the formats and I can format the data, and I can use the length statement to modify the lengths. So directly I can do this. In other ways, if I have GUI, let's say I have Windows, or I can simply call it as a PC SAS Windows version, or I have SAS Enterprise Guide, or even if I have SAS Studio, if I have any of the graphical user interface, in that particular case, instead of depending on all this, I can simply go with using the import wizard. So just I can use the import wizard and I can read the data. After that, I can go with your option 1 and option 2. Instead of even writing the proc import procedure, I can use the import wizard, and by using the import wizard, I can create a data set. After creating a data set, I can use my option 1 and as well as option 2. So totally, there are 3 different methods that are available. So there are even more methods I can say, right? But the easiest thing will be, I can make use of any of these options. Go with your proc import, or go with your data step, or even you can go ahead with your graphical user interface. First of all, did you get a clarity on what are the various methods we have and how can we do that? Can I get a quick confirmation from you? Shiny, you there? All right, so you texted me. Okay, fine. Now first we go with option number 2, because it is going to be the most easiest and sophisticated way of reading it. Then we try to convert that entire thing into automatic report. That is nothing but a macro. And I'm also going to help you with, if in future, if any of the CSV files comes, how to reuse that particular code. So first we'll write a base SAS code. After we write a base SAS code, we'll convert that base SAS code systematically into your macro code so that you can reuse the code whenever you want. All right. So let's start with method number 2, which is the easiest one, which is the most efficient one, I personally feel. So with that one, having said that, we'll start with the method number 2. What is method number 2? I want to go with the data step, and I'm going to use infile options. Right. So here what we are going to do is, we have our lib name, right? So let me cut this. Let's go with this here. So first step is creating a permanent library. We have already done that. So the next thing is, as they have asked in the question, we are going with creating individual data sets by reading the files. So the first file is going to be info country underscore CSV. While by reading this, I have to create a data set called info country. So to do this particular one, first of all, you need to see what we have in that particular file. So I'm just going with info country underscore CSV. Here it is. Just want to see what is the content of this. I can see there is a country ID, there is a country name, and there is going to be a country abbreviation, right? Only 3 are there. I have to read all these 3. And how to read the data, whether I have to read it as a character data or numeric data, what kind of data I have to follow, that information is also given here. So you can see here clearly, wherever you have braces, that is rectangular, wherever you have the braces are going to be the numbers, and you can clearly see wherever I have the rectangulars, those are going to be the text. And they have also clearly given text is nothing but the character. Whichever is going to be the numeric variable, they have given the number very clearly. So from here itself, we can read the data also. That is to understand what kind of variables, what kind of data types I have to assign for each of the variable. You can see that particular content from here, right? So first thing is just to copy the variable names. Again, I'm just going with the data set. I'm copying the data here. So creating the first data set. So here I'm simply saying that create SAS data sets by reading, 1 second, by reading CSV files. So we have simple method, list input method. So I'm just using the list input method here. So here I'm writing data, my data set name I have to mention, sorry, output data set name I have to mention there, followed by in file. I have to mention what is going to be my input file is, followed by, if at all I have to define the length, I need to define the length here. The length is going to be the first statement before even your in file statement, because we have discussed this in the initial classes. What is the precedence? What is the order I have to follow? What and all the variables that are part of my output, I'm going to decide under the input statement. If at all I have to put any formats, I'm going to put here. If at all I have to do any informates, I'm going to use this. Correct? These are all the possible options that I have. Correct? So first one, I know the input variables now. So since I know the input variables, I'm defining my variables here. So totally there are 3 variables: country ID, country name, and country abbreviation. Now we have to define, while defining the name, I also have to define what data type it is. If I don't mention any data type, it is going to be a numeric. If I mention a dollar here, it is going to be a character data type. So while defining the variables, I have to define the name of the variable. I also have to define the length of the variable. I also have to define the properties of the variable. Correct? So here they have given a very clear instructions about what are supposed to be the lengths. They don't want to go with the default lengths. They want to go with the specific lengths. So I have to give this information in your length statement also, because I am modifying the length for all the 3 variables. So we have to define the length. For that, I'm using the length statement. There is another way also. In the input statement itself, I can use a colon modifier, and I can also mention what is the format and what is the length as well. I want to strictly I want to go with the basics. That's the reason I'm just using the length statement. So we know that all 3 are character variables. I'm just assigning a dollar to all these 3. Then I also need to mention the lengths of it. So here you can clearly see that only the group name should be 20, remaining all should be 5. Correct? I think I'm looking at a wrong one. It's supposed to be, which data set I have mentioned? Info country. So the info country is here. This is the one. So country ID is 5, abbreviation is 5, country name is 20. So I have to follow the same. So I'm going back to the code. Country ID is 5, so 5 dot. Country name is 20, so 20 dot, and the abbreviation is 5 dot. So lengths are specified. After specifying the lengths, I'm just coming back to this. I'm just mentioning the data type for each of the variable. Now, my input statement is clear. My length statement is also clear. That is, what and all the variables to be part of my output is clear. What and all the lengths that I have to assign to each of the variable also clear. The next thing is, what is my input file is? My input file is infocountry.csv, which is actually present here. I have to take the complete path of this. So the complete path in the sense, this one, that is the total, this, followed by, since it's going to be info underscore country.csv, I have to take the one as it is. Just go with this info country. The extension is going to be CSV. And what is the name they asked us to create? They asked us to create a name called info underscore country. This is the name they have asked. So info underscore country. So now my input data set is, the output data set is ready. Length has been specified. Input file has been specified. What are the variables to be part of my output also specified. And you can see that there are no informates and formats for it. Correct? So since there is no informates and formats, I don't need this. Now, to read a CSV file means the default delimiter is going to be space, but for the CSV, the delimiter is going to be comma. So I have to mention what delimiter I want to use to read this file. This is DLM, followed by, I also need to mention an option called DSD, delimiter separated data. The reason for that is, if any of the, if in my input file, if there are two consecutive delimiters, I have to read the data between the two consecutive delimiters as a missing value. To do that, I'm using the DSD. We have already discussed all these options. That's the reason I'm just referring now. Last but not the least, I'm just using missing so that if any of the files or any of the data is missing, sorry, miss over. If any of the data is missing there, it has to consider that as a missing value. If it is a character missing data, it will read it as a blank space. If it is a numeric missing data, it is going to consider that as a your period. Now, let's read this. Now, something went wrong. No, everything is created, but I have used the country as your library as work library. So just we need the data in a test, right? That is what they have asked for. So I just need to go with the two-level naming convention, that is library reference dot your country name. Let's read on the same. Now I can see that the data has been created here. The data set is open, right? But we missed one thing. What is that? You can see that it is reading the variable names also as a data, correct? So what I have to mention now, I have to go with one additional argument, that is, or one additional option, that is, I need to specifically mention that your data actually starting with record number 2, that is observation number 2. So your first observation must be first ops is equal to 2. Now let's run the same again and check the data. Now I can see that there is country ID, country name, country abbreviation, all the three of them are ready. Now check the columns to see the properties. Now we can see that all three of them are text, and you can also see that the lengths are as they mentioned in the your diagram, correct? So 5, 20, and 5. Here 5, 20, and 5. So Saini, first of all, is that clear? Are you able to understand how we are reading the data? Because if I go
Yes,
with
sir.
the SAS, yes, please. If I go
Clear,
with the
sir.
data, yeah, wonderful, wonderful. If I go with the SAS data step, in a single data step itself, in a single data step block itself, we are able to read the data, we are able to create the data set, we are able to change the formats, we are able to change the lengths as well. That is the reason I preferred this particular method. Now, can we implement the same for the remaining? So
Okay.
let's go with the second data set. The second data set is going to be info group underscore x dot CSV, correct? So this is info underscore group underscore x. Let's copy from here. You have to be a bit careful here. You can see the names are little different. Rename. I'm just taking this. So the data set is here, and the data, the input file is here. The data set they asked is info underscore group underscore x, because your SAS data set should not have any of the data set name should not have any special characters except the underscore. Done. What are the names I have here? So to get the names, I'm just opening this particular data set. After that, I'm just copying the names, and that names I'm going to use here. So one is going to be group, right? All the three. Now let's see the, that is info group X. So 5, 5, 20, that is what they have asked for. All of them are character. So 5, 5, 20. So I'm just copying this data as it is from here, and I'm mentioning this. Only thing I don't need to mention here is going to be the lengths. Done. So everything remains going to be the same. No other changes
Yes.
here. Let's run this. So info group X is ready. The data has been read as usual. And if I go to the properties, it is 5, 5, 20. So the second data set is also ready. So can we go with the third one now?
Okay.
So what is the third one? Same, info group X, instead of that, info group Y. So change this, and info group Y, it is at the here, it has only two variables, correct? So we should be a bit cautious about the variable names. So coming back here and changing this, one is going to be group Y ID, the second one is going to be group Y name. And if I look into the properties are very clear, 5 and 20. This is going to be 5 dot, this is going to be 20 dot. The same thing I can use under my input also. So just I need to remove the lengths here. Run this. Third one is also ready. Now let's go with the fourth one. What is the fourth one here? The fourth one is nothing but here info
CSV.
project. Yeah, info project underscore CSV. So I can use the same thing as a dataset name. I can use the same thing as here, this one as well, info underscore project dot CSV. Let's open info underscore project. Here it is. So it has 3. So let's start with project ID, project name, and year. So year must be, it is a numeric value. Generally for the numeric values, I don't need to specify any of the links because by default system can handle it. But you can see here, they have not mentioned any length for it. They have mentioned only the format for it, correct? So I don't need to mention that in the length. Can remove it. So you can understand, right, why I'm not specifying the lengths, because the input variable, the minimum length is 3, maximum length is 8. Anything which is more than 8 characters, the input, your SAS can handle that length automatically for your numeric variable. For that reason, I'm not specifying the length here. So both of them are character data. So I'm specifying them. And if you go to info underscore group, sorry, info underscore project, so 10 and 20. So the first one is going to be 10. The second one is going to be 20. So here it is going to be dollar. It is going to be dollar. For year, I won't mention anything, but you have to mention format here. You can see they are looking for the format for your year. So I have to use format for which variable? Year variable. What is the format I want to use? It is simply a dot. It is simply a dot, not nothing more than that. It's just not regular format, right? Next, go with this. Now I can see the data here and I can go to the properties. When I look into the properties, I can clearly see for the format, I'm getting a dot here, right? So now the info project is also clear. Let me store this. I'm just saving this one as assignment task 1. Right. So far we have cleared up to this. Now we have to go with the response class. This is the another one. So what is this? Info underscore response class dot CSV. Let me, yeah, space is there. So let's copy this. Now go with the rename. So in the rename, done, but I should have a underscore here. Then once we open the data set, I can see there are only two of the variables. So just like that, I can use the two of the variables here. The first one is going to be response class ID. The second one is going to be response class name. So let's see the properties of that. Info responses. Here it is. Both of them are text. One is going to be 5, another is going to be 10. So it is going to be $5 dot. The another one is going to be $10 dot. Copy the same. Go to this one. I don't need to mention the lengths here. And I don't need a format also because they have not mentioned any formats. Done. So what's the next thing? I have to go with one more data set after it. That is nothing but here info rank X and rank Y. This is the another one. So go with this. So what is the name? I should use the same name. I should not mess up with the names. So info rank X and rank Y. So when it comes to the data set name, I can go with removing the spaces underscore X underscore Y. Right. So how about the properties of that? To see the properties, I need to see what and all the data I have there. So there are 4 variables. Let's copy them and put the 4 variables here. After that, I need to go with the data types and lengths of it. Right. Now go with this. So that is info X rank Y. Here it is. So there are 3 character variables 10, 5, 5. This is going to be $10 dot. This is going to be 5 dot. This is going to be the 5 dot, and this is going to be a numeric variable. I don't need to specify the length. So coming back to this, I can use the same variable. I don't need to specify the length, and I can go with what is the last variable in this number, which is nothing but the rank. So rank, I can go as a number, but they're asking us to go with the format for it. So let's go with the format. The format is for the rank alone, I need to go with the format of 8 dot. Done. Right. So all of them has been done so far. Whatever we would like to read, we have read all the data sets for the first set of tables. Yeah. Now there are 4 different CSV files I have 2007, 8, 9, 10. I have to read all these 4 and I have to create only one data set out of it. That is response. And I have to ensure that in each data set there is a variable called response ID, and that response ID variable must be sorted. Correct. So to do this particular one, this is nothing but the interleaving. We already discussed the vertical concatenation. Under the vertical concatenation, there is a topic called interleaving. That interleaving concept I should use here. And there are multiple ways of handling it. One way is I can read these 4 as 4 individual data types, that is 4 individual data sets. After that, I can concatenate it, and after concatenation, I can store it in the permanent data set. That is one way. Or I can use a simple macro, and I can use a simple percentage do loop, and I can also do that. There are 2 ways of handling it. Now let's go with the straightforward method, normal base SAS code first. Later we can convert this into the macro code. So what is going to be the response now? I have to go with 4 I have to go with 4 of them like this. Already I have created one. What is that? I have to go with, let's say, response 2007. This is my input file. For this, I have to create one data set. This must not be a permanent data set because only the response I have to store it as a permanent data set. Rest of them, I don't need to save it as a permanent data set. Then if I look into the variable dataset properties, all of them must have the same variables. Then only I can append it. So first of all, I'm taking the variables first. I have response ID, response class ID, group X ID, group Y ID, and also score. These are the various values. And if I go to the properties, it is very obvious that for the number is a variable which is a numeric value. The rest of them are the character values. Only the response ID is 10, remaining all of them are the 5. So $5 dot, sorry, 10 dot. So the rest of them are going to be only 5. $5 dot, 5 dot, 5 dot. And for this one, last one, I don't need to mention any length because it's a numeric variable. Correct. And for the score alone, I have to go with the format. So what is the format they have expected? So the expected format is going to be 8 dot. So I just simply put 8 dot. Let's see whether I'm able to read this or not. Done. Now it is a temporary data set. I have to look at the work library and I can see response underscore. Oh, something went wrong. Let's see what went wrong here.
In formats, 8 dot not supporting, sir. I think so. 20 dot.
No, that is fine. I don't get that error. The output we got here is, you can see the response ID got all the, since I use the 10 dot there, right? It is trying to read all the data here itself. And also for some reason, your comma is not working there. Let's see that one more time. Right. First of all, the data is clear. There is no issues with the input data. So go back. So we specified the length here. Here I use the length. So it is trying to read the first variable with 10 length, second with 5 length, and third with the 5 lengths. So if I use length value in the input statement, there I'm going to get an issue. If I use a colon modifier, I don't get it. Without using a colon modifier, the moment I put 10 dot here, it is trying to read your resp ID value with 10 bytes of the length. So from your input variable, it is trying to read that entire 10 length here. That is where the issue has occurred. And the second one, it is trying to read 5 as a length. So to avoid that, we should not use length in your input statement. Now run this. Now look into your output. You got the right output. And you can also check the format now. The format for your score will be 8 dot. Is that clear, Saini? So the issue will be, we did a mistake there. That is, we mentioned the length here, right? Now, this is for 2007. I have to do the same for 2008, 2009, and 2010, correct? So ideally, I don't need to write a code like this. Instead, I can use the macros. Macros is the simplest one. I can write it in a loop that I'm going to show you little later. After we complete this particular part, we can go with the how to deal the same in the macros. Because I have not covered the macros yet for you. So that's the reason I'm hesitating to use the macros here. 2009, and the last one is going to be 2010. 2008, 2007, 2009. Yes, all of them we have done. So let's copy this and run them. I can see all the data sets are available here. Now I scroll up. Now I have to go with the concatenation because I have to use either I can go with the proc append or I can go with the dataset concatenation, and I have to store, I have to concatenate all these data sets vertically. But they asked us to go with specific thing. What is that? Your final data set test.response should have your output, that is the data set in your, sorry, the data in your response data set must be sorted by your response ID. For that, all I have to do is I need to sort one. I can go with concatenating all the data set. After that, I can sort it. That is nothing but go with the concatenation, then go for the sort. Otherwise, I can sort all the individual data sets first itself. That is data equal to response underscore 2007 by RESP ID and run. Similarly, 2008, 2009, 2010. I can do this. So I can simply sort the data on the RESP ID first itself. After doing that, I can go with one interleaving. So what is interleaving concept? Concatenation followed by a specific variable, that is data test dot response. I can go with set. There are 4 tables. What are them? Test underscore, sorry, response underscore 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. After that, I simply use by variable here. The by variable is going to be resp ID and run. With that, your final data set is ready. That is your test dot response, which is going to have all the scores from all the data sets. So is that clear, Saini?
Yes,
So
sir.
this is the simple code we have written. That is, we have not automated anything. We just used a normal base SAS code to do this. Then how to write this efficiently? If at all I want to write this efficiently, I can use SAS macros. That is how to use the SAS macros. I can go with. So first I'll explain you one, then I can give you this as an assignment to complete for the remaining. Suppose this is the one I'm talking here. I need to figure out macro is nothing but what and all I can reuse, or what and all I can consider that as a variables. I have to turn your hard coded values as the variables. For an example, here this entire thing is your input path. That is nothing but where your input file is, correct? In our program, in our case, it is going to be the C users desktop NMG SAS test. In our case, maybe for others it may be different. So can I consider this as an input path? Right, I'm trying to figure out what and all the variables are there, what and all I can change, what and all you can expect it to change. So this whole thing I can call it as a input path. So the first thing I have identified is the first change I'm expecting here is going to be input path. So this is my input path. So input path is equal to, in my case, this is the one. For others, this might be different. So whatever I can see it as an input path, I'm simply replacing that with the variable name. Correct? Since it's a macro, I'm calling this as a macro variable. If I want to resolve a macro variable, I have to use ampersand in front of it. So if I say ampersand of input path, then system can understand that there is a macro variable called input path and I have to resolve that value here. It is always suggestible to use dot after your macro variable. Whenever you have this type of extension, it will be really handy. So always a macro variable will be associated with ampersand in the precedence and dot at the end. So this is supposed to be the macro variable now, right? So I'm simply creating a macro variable. There are 6 different ways of creating a macro variable. I'm using the most simplest one, that is percentage let. Done. So what is this percentage let? My input path is going to be this whole thing, and followed by nmg, followed by SAS underscore test. But here you can see there are spaces. You can see there are spaces. So just to, I can go with your blind code options. I can go for the nrstr options. That will be little too much at this particular point of time. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to change the dataset name, your folder name, like this. Wherever whatever the folder I'm using, I'm just trying to change the folder name now, just to avoid going with the other options. There are SAS options to handle it, but it is too heavy to handle at this particular point of time. So for that reason, I'm just using this as a underscore. It is using somewhere, just a second. Mm, Otherwise, I can do one thing. Whatever the content I have, this content, I'm just creating in, I'm calling it as a TMP. In the TMP, I'm saving this. So this is going to be my input file location now. So you can ask me, Murli, why you are doing this? The reason for doing this will be, I don't want to go with the other macro options at this particular point of time. I don't want you to stress with all those options. That's the reason I'm going with a simple option now. This is the first one. So let's come from the line number 1. For us, the the output library is going to be this. Correct? When you're going with the other project, the output library will be changed, right? So my output library is also going to be a changeable one. So percentage let, I'm simply calling it as a out. So out indicates my output library, or out indicates what is my output library is. I can simply call this as ampersand of out dot. My input file also will be, my table name is always changing, right? Here it is your info country. In other case, it might be different. So whatever the data set name is, I'm simply calling it as a DS, and the data set name will be changing time to time. So whichever is changing, I'm replacing that with the macro variables. Correct? Then if you scroll down a little, so now we can see that this is going to be my input file. So I'm just simply calling this as input file dot. So what is my input file is, I have to mention my input file here. Percentage let input file is equal to info underscore country. Now you can see, here I can see the variable names. There are ways to calculate the variable names also. There are ways, but here I'm writing this. I'm leaving the names of the variables as it is. There are ways to pick these variable names dynamically. That option is also available. Now you can see here everything is dynamic. Input path I can change anytime I want. Output library I can change anytime I want. Dataset name I can change anytime I want. Input file also I can change anytime I want. So all of them are going to be dynamic. But this out is there, right? This is, you should not write like this. So apologies for that. It is a library name. So lib name out followed by your this one, right? This is the library name. But here I can say percentage let output library is equal to, or I can say simply I can call it as a library. Library is equal to, in our case it is out. For others it may be different. Now I just need to change this to library. Now you can see that everything is dynamic, correct? Now I can put this code into a macro. Percentage macro. Anything starts with percentage macro is going to be a macro name. I can give any name to this. For an example, read external file underscore 1. This is the macro name I'm giving to this. This macro starting here, and the macro will be end by using MEND option, mend. So this is the part of the macro. Now let's see. I'm executing these now. After executing it, I'm just executing the macro. You can see that the macro has been executed and there are no errors also. There is no errors and the macros has been executed. Sorry, compiled. If at all I want to call this particular macro, all I need to do is just call the macro by using percentage followed by your macro name. When you do it, it will execute and it will create the output. Now you can see it is saying that 2 records are read from this particular one and it has created a data set in the out.info country. Now you can see out.info country has a data set and you can also see that there is a variable, there is a library called out. Within that it has been created. And every time whenever you are executing it, you don't need to compile the entire code one more time. Suppose if I'm going with the another macro, so let's say that I'm just going with a different file. In that particular case, all I need to do is I just need to change what is my input file, what is my output data set, and what is my library is. If I change that, automatically it is going to create the data sets accordingly. But here in our case, macros are not that efficient because I need to read this. I need to change this particular part for every macro because the variables are not same. In our case, for first 4, or I can say that till you go to the response up to this, your macros are not that useful. But from here onwards, to read your response 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010 and all, your macros are really useful. We take another session. In that particular session, I'll help you with how to convert this entire code into macro and how to go with the other 2 methods of your other 2 alternate methods for dealing this particular assignment. So Saini, are you clear with whatever the contents I have delivered? You can ignore this particular one because I'm going to take another session for converting your base SAS code into the macros. Well, you can go with this one. This is going to be the simplest method of reading your data from the external files. Any questions?
No question, sir. Thank you so much. I really very clear. I understood.
Wonderful, wonderful. No problem. It's my pleasure. All right.